So today we are going to grout. We've done all of our tile, and now we're gonna go back and we're gonna put this grout in the edges and in these cracks and fill all those with grout, just like we did in this room. Now you can see there's still a little bit of grout left on the surface. That'll wash off pretty easy. If it doesn't, you can mix a little bit of sulfamic acid with your water and spray it, and you'll see that that sulfamic acid will cause it to come up real easy as well. This is what grout, the reason why you use grout is because it gets extremely hard, and if you put water on that grout, it will never soften up. The mud underneath these tiles, like if you were to get it wet, it could soften up a little bit, but this grout, and this, you can wash it, and that'll never soften up. Okay, another thing is, you want to make sure the grout is somewhat thick, not too thin, because you want the grout to come up as high as possible. If it's a real watered down grout, you'll have real deep grout edges, and then when you're sweeping, all that dirt will want to fall in your grout edges. So, also another important thing is you want to get a grout that's somewhat similar in color to your tile. So that way it will look nice. Or if you have like a white tile, sometimes people like gray just to make it pronounced. But typically people like to do similar grout colors. We are using sanded grout. We're using sanded grout on the big tile because we're using 1/8 inch grout joints, okay, to 1/2 inch. If it's smaller than that, you probably want to use non-sanded because the sand will not fit in those cracks if it's smaller than 1/8 inch. So poly bin, 1/8 inch. You're going to need a bunch of buckets of water when you're grouting because you need one bucket where you can wash off your mixer. You're going to need one bucket that you can wipe your grout after you put it on. You're going to need another bucket that you can mix with the grout, and then you're going to need another bucket that you can put the grout in and mix together. You may even need a 5th bucket, and that's why we have these, for extra water. So if you really want to grout quickly, that's what you're going to need. You also need a drill with a mixer that looks just like that. Those are the best mixers. Now, the first thing you're going to do when you are grouting is you want to make sure that all of your gaps here are cleaned out and that there's no dirt in those grouts, in those cracks. So we've already chipped those cracks out. I'll show you kind of what we did. Basically, and you got to be real careful if you use this, but we're using this oscillating tool with just a regular old bit in it, and it's getting wore down because we're using it, but you can see right here, so you see that there's a little bit of grout there. We'll put this inside. Now the reason why I say you don't want to be like this, chipping the side here, because then it'll mess up your tile, but you want to keep it in the middle, and you just want to very carefully chip that out. Then you can vacuum it out as well. You can see there's some here as well. So there's going to be spots like that that you're going to want to do. Then you're going to vacuum. And the next thing you're going to do after you vacuum is you're going to wipe down the tile and get off any extra grout on the edges here in the middle or anywhere else. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and start vacuuming. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take these sponges. You wanna squeeze them out like that. Put a little water in there like that. And you wanna wipe down the top. Just make sure you got all the grout, because the main thing is, if there's any grout touching the corners here, you're gonna see that. And if you wanna be really detailed and neat, you wanna take these sponges like this, and this doesn't have to take long. This is a quick thing. Just wipe, and if you see any on the gaps, like you'll see right there, that's sometimes when you get close down here, you'll notice, see, that's actually too high. And so that's when you'll come back, and that's why I say you keep this, because you're gonna notice spots as you continue to go down into your project. And make sure you get all that up. So you can see here, when it comes on here, it wants to stay. That's the perfect amount. That's the perfect amount of water that you want to put in your grout. It's mixed good. It's set up good. Now we're gonna go ahead and put it on this tile. Show you guys how this works. So basically you're just gonna take it, and then you're gonna wanna rub it in like that. And also I like to rub it on the corners in the bathrooms, because if the water goes and gets in those corners, you don't want it running and seeping in under the floor and into the walls and rotting stuff out and making it moldy. So I will put it all on the edges too. It's just, I mean, you don't have to, but I like to, because you will get water in the bathroom, and every once in a while it'll leak, and the toilet will leak, and it'll want to go on the walls. It'll get down in there and leak through. But if you seal it like this, you'll be able to see that water, and it won't just slowly rot everything out. There we go. So basically what you're doing is you're pushing down, 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 down. Then you're wiping it sideways with a lot of pressure. Okay, so you're pushing it down and wiping sideways. And then you go to the next hole. So push it down, 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 wipe. Okay? You want to get a certain amount of grout done. So, like, for example, this room, I'm going pretty fast. So I'm probably going to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 rows all the way over. And then I'm going to come back and wipe it. Starting on this side. Because it'll be somewhat dry. You don't want to wipe it off while it's still really wet like this. You want to let it set up a little bit and then come and wipe it. So now we've got that all done. It's starting to dry over there. So I'm gonna go back and get you some fresh water. Make sure your shoes don't get all wet. Get about that much water in there. You don't need that much because you're gonna keep changing it out anyway. Bang your feet off, get all the stuff off of it. You'll see in there it's starting to dry on the tiles. Once you start seeing a sheen where it starts to dry like that, it lets you know it's time. Just leave your bucket over here. Take your 2 sponges. Now I like to use 2 so you can go a little quicker. But basically when you're rubbing this, there's really not a secret. I mean, you want to get most of this mud off of these tiles is kind of the point of what you're doing now. You get too much on your sponge, then you're gonna go and dip it. So we got quite a bit on there. So we're gonna come dip it in here, squeeze it out. You want to squeeze it out to where there's no water in there. See that? Make sure it's really squeezed out. And then you'll come in here and finish. And you'll notice right here, you see that's the spot where I didn't really get the concrete out good enough. And so it's not a big deal that this is my rental, but if this was your flooring in your house, you would probably want to clean better on the cracks, because at this point I'd have to go back after it dried, scrape that out, and then clean it. I mean, you could possibly go like this. You know, you could clean it like that, and then come back, get you some grout, fill that hole right there again, and then wipe it. And that's an option too, if you see that. So when you're finished grouting, you're done with all the grout's in the holes, it's it's maybe 30 minutes to an hour afterwards. You want to come by and get a clean bucket of water and make one last run through and clean the surface off. And then you can also, in a bottle, you can mix some sulfamic acid with some water, like a 10-to-1 ratio, or maybe even a 5-to-1 ratio. But you don't want to put too much because it can yellow, especially if you have white grout or if you have white tile, it can tend to yellow those tiles. But you can spray that on the surface and then wipe it off, and it will make it perfectly clear, and you won't see any of that excess grout. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and wipe it. We've got our sponge, our water. We're going to do that first, and then at the very end of the project, if we need to, we'll come back and we'll spray a little bit of sulfamic acid with water solution on it, and then we'll wipe it off. So go ahead and take your sponge and squeeze that water out. Okay, you dip it in the water, squeeze it out, then you can go ahead and start rubbing on the surface of this tile. That'll get the very last bit. And you maybe just want to wash maybe 2 or 3 tiles with one, turn it over 2 or 3 tiles, and then do the next one, 2 or 3 tiles, 2 or 3 tiles, and then dip it back in the water. The point is not to have any grout on the tile when you're done. So we're done grouting. We had this little nice rubber, and this is the one I like to use. It is a gum rubber float. So it's about 15 bucks, a little more than the cheaper ones, but it has a rubber end here that will not ruin. The foam ones definitely will ruin. So you rub your grout, you push it into the holes, you scrape it off, and then you wipe it off with your sponge.